With that bit of excitement over, Kane returns to his regiment, and everything really calms down for a little bit. However, the investigation into where the heretics are coming from and who is arming them continues, and they eventually make a break in the case. They're able to find one of the rebel cells, and what they find inside are various sacrificial victims. And what this will lead to will become clear later in the story. Also, Kane has been having some recurring nightmares of a chaos sorceress that he encountered several years before. This, of course, will become important later in the story as well. Essentially, all that she's trying to do in the dreams is just sort of weird him out. She says things like, "I'm coming to taste your soul," or "I'm coming back," and stuff like that. Well, time goes on, and the investigation into the heretics' location continues, and eventually they get another break in the case. They are able to find another heretic base. The attack goes fairly well, because really the base was located in a bordello, so it wasn't all that well defended, although they did have a number of missile launchers. The overall battle gets rather dangerous when they actually enter said bordello and encounter the leader of it, who just so happens to be a psyker. Psyker has powers that are roughly comparable to Force users in Star Wars, so they're fairly dangerous. The Psyker is able to kill a number of soldiers by making them think they're seeing their various loved ones. Thankfully, Jurgen steps up at just the right time. Kane sees through this mental illusion and promptly shoots her in the head. Not too long after that, an advanced force from the Chaos Fleet attacks. Now, this is the actual Chaos military proper. The forces that Kane had encountered earlier were merely the Chaos Irregulars. Although with Chaos, they're all pretty much irregular, because there's no real discipline. All they really do is yell loudly and launch themselves at the enemy soldiers, and are usually just slaughtered en masse. But of course, anyone can really be drowned under weight of numbers. And once again, we see one of the paradigms of military science fiction. A soldier named Smitty. It seems like in every single military novel, they always end up saying they need bigger guns, or there's some guy in there named Smitty. Seriously. Now, Kane, of course, is caught up in all of this, and ends up having to face an extremely powerful enemy. And that enemy is a Chaos Space Marine. Once again, remember, a Space Marine is essentially a more powerful version of Master Chief. So this would indeed be a Emperor on Earth, I cried, my bowels spasming, reminding me once again why I should never eat street vendor food. The twisted parody of a Space Marine leapt to avoid some incoming fire, and as ill luck would have it, his leap carried him almost to my feet. I stood there aghast, and had he used any other method, he certainly would have killed me. But his whirring chain axe triggered my dueling reflexes, and I instinctively brought up my chainsword to parry his blow. And then I began fighting for my life in earnest. "Is that the best you can do?" I taunted him, sure that in his arrogance he had expected an easy kill, and I hoped to goad him into making a mistake. I slashed at his chest, raising a shower of sparks from the abused Creamite, and shouted, "I thought the Acolytes of Khorne were supposed to be warriors, not a bunch of pansies." "I'll feed you your own entrails," the giant roared, slashing down with his cumbersome weapon. I then deflected it so that it struck his own leg, raising another shower of golden sparks, and a cheer from the surrounding soldiers, and then sneered, "Like I've never heard that before," following through and going right under his guard. I rolled in the snow, making as much distance as I could. Jurgen then opened up with his melter rifle, thus killing the horrid abomination. And with all the inoccupants I could muster, I simply stated, "I think now would be a good time for some tea." As they always say, there's a calm before the storm, and before too long, the Chaos Invasion forces descended upon the planet in earnest. And of course, Kane ends up being right in the thick of it. He eventually ends up confronting a tank that's trying to destroy a dropship. Thinking quickly, he jumps into the dropship and has them take off. Not an act of cowardice, but had they actually destroyed the dropship, it would have exploded with enough force to take out the entire compound, and thus lose a lot of lives that could be used against Chaos. "Get into the air! Now! Oh!" With the ramp finally closed, we were airborne, and had I known where we were going, or what we would find when we got there, I would have gladly charged the tank and considered myself lucky. We finally get another good chapter quote. "Life's a journey. A shame about the destination." It's even from a nicely titled play of, well, what did you expect? Extremely cynical, and, unfortunately, extremely true. It is by this point in the novel that we learn why there were so many different sacrificial locations. Essentially, the forces of chaos were trying to draw upon the warp in order to call forth a demon. It is also by this point that no one knows where the last sacrificial site is going to be. They eventually figure out that it's going to be on a mineral dredger. You see, apparently, in order to open up a warp portal, you have to be in physical contact with the planet. And according to this, water is not actually part of the planet. You actually have to be touching the Earth, so to speak. And so they land and disembark. And then another ship comes to land on the mineral dredger. Now, they have no idea who this is. But when that landing lamp drops, Kane sees someone he did not expect. In fact, he would have probably more expected a Necron to come out singing Judas Priest's Electric Eye than the person who exited. Essentially, it was Commissar Behe, who had come to arrest him.